I want to show you like a 5-minute tourist video just to show you how beautiful Kashmir is in high quality video, because the documentary is not the greatest quality video. I mean, there's lots of scenes of Kashmir, honestly, but so I'm going to do that. And I'm just going to talk for a minute, just real briefly, about the current situation in Kashmir, just kind of relating it to this to the past, and maybe making some connections with Jesus there. All right. So if everybody would oh, go ahead, Mark.
If people can mute, that would be nice.
Yeah, I was going to say, if everybody can mute, and there's nothing scheduled after this till 7, so we'll have time for discussion. So if everybody could mute now, and then I'll unmute when the documentary is over, and then we can share thoughts, feelings, reflections, comments. All right, great. So let's start off with, I got to put on screen share, huh? Where are we? Screen share. Optimize the, here we go. So this is just a little, well, it's 8 minutes, but okay, I might end it before the 8 minutes, we'll see. Just a tourist documentary, the one of Kashmir, one of the most beautiful places in the world.
Jannat-e-Kashmir, paradise on earth. That's how most travelers think of Kashmir. As an idyllic Garden of Eden with more natural beauty than the eyes can fathom. With lakes, mountains, meadows and snowfields, Kashmir does indeed offer panoramic views till as far as the eye can see. And that's why it is a popular tourist destination in India. From skiing in Gulmarg to staying in a houseboat in Srinagar, there's lots to do in Kashmir. Apart from that, there's also a lot of culture to soak in the form of traditional Kashmiri meals, music and dresses. If you're planning a trip to Kashmir, this is your one-stop guide for everything you need. The northernmost region of India was once a state and has now been split up into 2 union territories, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. If you want to truly roam around the place and soak in the natural beauty of Kashmir, target visiting in the summer months between March and June. That's when the valley is abloom and every corner is a picture postcard. But if you want to see some pristine snowfall and try some snow activities, then you should visit in December-January. Avoid the monsoon season because the region tends to see landslides and road blockages around that time. There's so much to see and do in Kashmir that you'll be spoiled for choice. But here are some experiences that definitely deserve a spot on your bucket list. One of the most exhilarating experiences in Kashmir is exploring the Dal Lake. You can start by taking a shikara ride on this gorgeous lake set against the backdrop of snow-capped peaks where several Bollywood movies have been filmed. You can also drop by India's only floating post office. End the adventure by staying overnight in a houseboat. India's largest freshwater lake, the Wular Lake, is also a great place to get the adrenaline pumping. Try water skiing and other thrilling adventure sports here. The summer capital of Jammu and Kashmir is Srinagar. While in Srinagar, don't forget to visit the magnificent Mughal gardens, the Hazrat Bal Mosque, the Jama Masjid and the powerful Jhelum River. A trip to the Indira Gandhi Memorial Tulip Garden would also be a delightful addition to your itinerary, especially in April when the Tulip Festival is celebrated. Another great attraction of Kashmir is Gulmarg, the Meadow of Flowers. The famous Gulmarg gondola is a cable car that takes you high into the mountains for truly surreal views of the valley. Gulmarg is a great place to try snow activities like sledding, skiing and tobogganing in the winter months. It is also home to India's only igloo cafe, so drop by for a warm cuppa to heat up your bones in the icy cold weather. Another pit stop in Gulmarg should be to play golf at the Gulmarg Golf Course. It is one of the highest 18-hole golf courses in the world and the views are breathtaking. Patni Top is one of the most underrated parts of Kashmir. The green meadows, set against the snowy white hills and framed by a blazing blue sky, are a sight to behold. Exploring the region by pony, much like the locals do, is a great way to truly appreciate this marvelous vista. For wildlife lovers, the Kishtwar National Park is a great stop. Snow leopards, Himalayan black bears, red fox and griffon vultures are some of the rare species that can be spotted in Kashmir. If you want to find inner peace, there are two pilgrimages in Kashmir that are extremely popular. The Amarnath Yatra is undertaken to worship a shivling made naturally by snow. This pilgrimage generally takes place in the summer months. The second pilgrimage is the Vaishno Devi Yatra. This starts from Katra and takes you to the shrine of Mata Vaishno Devi in the Trikuta mountain. Apart from this, Kashmir has many incredibly gorgeous hill stations like Sonmarg, Pahalgam, Anantnag and Baramulla that offer a simpler way of life and jaw-dropping Himalayan vistas. Jammu Kashmir is home to 3 commercial airports in Jammu, Kargil and Srinagar. They are all well connected with frequent flights to
Gorgeous, huh? That's the good. Beautiful, but at the same time, you may be aware that Kashmir has been the place of this ongoing conflict since 1947 between Pakistan and India, and China is involved. And in this map, you'll see India's territory is Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, right here. Okay, these two. Pakistan claims Gilgit, Baltistan, and down in this region, Azad, Kashmir, all this, the green. And China claims Aksai Chin and Trans-Karakoram Tract. Okay, and this has been a source of ongoing conflicts and tension, and still is to this day, between these 3 nations. And I just had, what occurred to me as I was thinking about this, doing this today, is that given that this is, according to Mayor Baba and according to tradition, where Jesus came in before and after the crucifixion and where he's buried, the 2 places in the world that have been the source of ongoing, like, open political wounds that just will not heal, no matter what people do, all the best efforts to create a lasting peace settlements that just fall apart, ongoing bloodshed. The 2 places are the Middle East and here. There's other places in the world, but these stand out. And it just got me thinking that they're like, the image that came to me was the stigmata of Jesus, that St. Francis had them, Father Pio, Italian priest and monk, he died in the 20th century. Other saints have had the stigmata, and you know, the wounds of Jesus that never heal, and it's like they take on the suffering of Jesus. Who knows? That's what apparently is happening. And then what occurred to me is these 2 places in the world, were the place where Jesus was born and the place where he died, are like the political stigmata of the world. And it's just like they're open wounds, political wounds that just will not heal despite everyone's best effort to solve the problem and create a lasting peace, and it just does not happen. This has been here. China invaded. I forget what their provocation was, but China invaded in '62 during East-West gathering that Mayor Baba had, and they took the troops into Ladakh, and India had to fight back and drove them back. These wars between three wars between Pakistan and India were over Kashmir, provocations over Kashmir that became a flashpoint. And to make matters more complicated, these areas, Jammu, Ladakh, want to be independent countries. And India does not want that to happen. And I think probably for good reasons, because they accuse Pakistan of provoking the independence movement. And India is furious. They will become pro-Pakistani, and then it's right there on their border, and they already have they already lost, a big chunk of their territory to Pakistan. China is not happy with some UN agreement that was signed. So it's just ongoing. No, these three countries can't agree, but there's a lot of bloodshed, and the pro-separatist movements have been militant, and India's crackdown. And most recently, you may have seen it in the paper, September, the head of the main person of the independence movement in these territories, I think Myrtle, he died, natural death at age 92. And India was afraid that there was scheduled to be a big ceremony of his burial, and they were afraid that was going to intensify the separatist movements. They reportedly snatched his body and buried him in secret in the middle of the night, and that caused great offense. This was this past September, and there was a outbreak of violence against the Indian troops. So India has really cracked down since September. They closed it off. They shut down the internet, and I think it's pretty much shut down. You can't get in. No one knows what's happening there. India and Pakistan have been accused by the UN of ongoing human rights violations, rapes. So it's ugly. So there's this incredible physical beauty and this endless situation. Kind of, at least in North Ireland, it got more or less settled, but this never does. So it's interesting, I think, just to connect it to who knows what, but where Jesus died and where he was born are these open wounds, like I said, the political stigmata. Yeah, and the players are here. According to scholars, Indian forces have committed many human rights abuses, and so has Pakistan, acts of terror against the civilian population, et cetera, et cetera. And it's mostly the crackdown on the separatist movements. They really don't want separate countries, and I can understand it. Where they're coming from with that, but it's for their own security reasons. All right, so just keep that in mind. That's the current situation there, and so I think it's really fascinating that Jesus was there. And before I showed this government of India documentary, I gleaned a few comments, excerpts from Lord Mayor. For those of you who don't know, Lord Mayor is a 20-volume biography of Mayor Baba written by Bal Kachuri, one of Mayor Baba's closest disciples, his night watchman, etc., and author of several books. But and on page, if you want to refer to this, for those of you, it's called Lord Mayor Online. The whole book is online, all 20 volumes. So page 1513, and this is Mayor Baba's comments about, or statements about Jesus in India that are in Lord Mayor. Dressed in disguise so as not to be recognized by the villagers, Baba showed them where he stayed in seclusion and fasted in 1929. I think that was Baba's first visit to Kashmir, also in 33. Baba stated that Jesus did not die on the cross, but came to India, where he spent many years wandering from place to place, doing his universal work until he dropped his body in Kashmir. Pointing to a hill, Baba revealed, "There is the place where two of Christ's apostles, Bartholomew and Thaddeus, buried his body. They had accompanied him from Palestine." Being in one of the most beautiful spots on earth, the Westerners found that a spiritual presence pervaded the atmosphere. An indescribable and peace and serenity were felt at Harvan. So Baba was at Harvan, and he pointed up to a mountain and said that's where he's buried. And you'll see in the documentary but the tradition is that there's a tomb in Kashmir, and it's called the Rosabelle tomb. The tradition is Jesus is buried in this tomb. So Baba said that he's buried in the mountains, and no one will ever find his tomb. So, so I'll go with what Baba said, and so they're close. If that he's in Srinagar, the tradition is close. So who knows who's in that tomb? Okay, another page, Lord Mayor, page 914. The next day, Baba spoke about Jesus and his parables, and again stated that after Jesus's crucifixion, he went to Kashmir, where he died. And then lastly, on page 611, it is a legend among Hindus, Tibetans, and the Muslims, and the Jews too. And you'll see this in the documentary. All these ancient texts, Vedic texts, Buddhist texts, Muslim texts about Jesus in Kashmir. All these three religions confirm that Jesus lived and died in India. In the course of talking with the Mandali, Baba's disciples at 9:45 p.m. on the 23rd of August, Baba confirmed this. There is one secret about Jesus which the Christians do not know. When Jesus was crucified, he did not die. He entered the state of Nirvikap Samadhi. I am God's state without bodily consciousness. I think that's the state of a perfect master of God realized being who has no awareness of the creation. He's just totally immersed in divine bliss, God realization. On the third day, he again became conscious of his body, and he traveled secretly in disguise eastward with some apostles to India. This was called Jesus's resurrection. After reaching India, he traveled further east to Rangoon in Burma. That's interesting. He went to Burma, where he remained for some time. And look at Burma today, all the horrors that are going on there. He then went north to Kashmir, where he settled. When his work was finished on earth, he dropped his body and entered Nirvikap Samadhi. He was buried in Kashmir. Saints in India have verified these facts about Jesus's travel. Mankind will soon become aware of them. So fascinating. All right, so I thought this would be given the season, Christmas season, good time to watch this Government of India documentary. It's about an hour long, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. And there are numerous books. This is not new. This came out in 2012. This is not new. There's they mentioned some books in this documentary, but you go on Amazon books and you'll see there's numerous books, Jesus in India, that have been written. And there's other BBC did a documentary, but I like this one because BBC is kind of secular in their approach, and I think this one they've got it pretty closely about they talk about the oneness of all religions, etc. So this documentary explores one of the theories which connects Jesus to India and places several strong evidences based on research work by individuals mentioned in this film. This film does not conclude that this theory is final. One thing I want to mention too, the place in Srinagar, the tomb where a lot of people believe Jesus is buried. It's gotten very controversial. It's been there's some of the fundamentalist Muslims and even fundamentalist Hindus are now resenting all the attention it's getting. And when film crews have come, they've been met with hostility and threats of violence. And so there's a counter reaction against this. Fundamentalists or Muslims saying Jesus can't be buried there. He never had a body, or I don't know. So there's just, it's the nature of the times. There's just a counter reaction to this theory going on among some Hindus and Muslims. That's where they believe he's buried, at my Roosevelt Shrine. And Baba said no, he's in the mountains.
Since time immemorial, India has been a source of wonder to the entire world. This ever-flowing Ganga has nourished a civilization which has always excelled in unveiling the secrets of creation. The beauty of the thoughts produced by this marvelous civilization is unparalleled. Its amazing mysticism and philosophy has bewildered the entire world. This culture has been a perfect showcase of the underlying unity of a great diversity of views, paths, ideologies, and opinions. Ekam Satyam Vipra Bahuddha Vadanti proclaim the Vedic scriptures. Truth is one. Knowers express it in different ways. No wonder India is associated with mystique, the land of 1,000 mysteries. Since times unknown, explorers have sought knowledge, wisdom, and insight into the various riddles and facets of this grand civilization. The pursuit is still on. India continues to fascinate, to intrigue. India's Himalayan valley of Kashmir has been known as the heaven on earth. These waters of the Dal Lake have seen innumerable chapters of history unfolding one after another. Even now, there are many secrets of the past which beckon the spirit of exploration. Some of them have the potential to completely alter our perception of history. One such intriguing history is lying quietly since more than 1,900 years in this Kanyar locality of Srinagar. This place conceals one of the biggest mysteries of the modern world, the Rosable Shrine, burial place of Yuza Asif. This board displays an information about the book Tarikh-i-Azam, written in 1729 AD by Khwaja Azam Dedmari. This spot is famous as the resting place of a messenger. I have read in an ancient book that a prince from a foreign land arrived here and engaged himself in piety and prayers and became messenger of God for the Kashmiri people. What is intriguing is that since always this Yuza Asif is considered to be none other than Jesus Christ himself, the savior of mankind. A number of Sanskrit, Buddhist, Persian, Arabic and Kashmiri historical texts show that Yuza Asif is another name of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is not the original name of the Savior. His original Hebrew name was perhaps Yeshua. His name in other languages are derivatives.
Hold on his name for a second. Iosus, Jesus, Isa, Yuza, and Jesus. And also they're saying Yuza Asif, Y-U-Z-A-S-A-F.
Of this Hebrew name. According to these texts, Jesus did not die on the cross. He survived the crucifixion and migrated to live in Kashmir. In Kashmir, he preached for a long time and finally left his physical frame at a very old age. And this is supposed to be his tomb. The shrine is beautifully decorated and lighted. The carvings of Kashmiri designs add to the grandeur of the place. The air is filled with fragrance of the divine. The tomb itself is of a pre-Islamic period. This old photograph shows that the wooden coffin was actually covered with a cloth of Jewish appearance. This huge wooden sarcophagus, which we see, is only a facade. The real tomb is in the underground chamber, which is sealed now. The tomb lies in east-west direction, which is distinctly the Jewish direction of burial. It cannot be a Muslim tomb, because Muslims bury their dead in southwest direction. We all know that Jesus Christ was a born Jew. In the 18th century, the Grand Mufti of Kashmir was the highest court of law in this land. In 1766 AD, he issued a decree regarding the Rosable Shrine. According to this decree, User Asif was a prophet to the people of Kashmir, and he had come to Kashmir during the reign of King Gopananda. It is well known that King Gopananda ruled Kashmir during the 1st century AD. This matches exactly with the time period of Jesus Christ. There is another very tantalizing evidence. These are the footprints of User Asif. They show deep marks of wounds, something like those of crucifixion. Well-known scientist Kurt Berner has examined these marks and says that this is exactly how the feet of Jesus were nailed on the cross, one upon the other, pierced with a single nail.
There's no doubt in my mind that Jesus and Yusasaf are exactly the same person. I think the evidence is overwhelming.
There are several websites which provide detailed information on this subject. They contain a wide...
Hold that for a minute, if any of you want to write this down. tombofjesus.com, jesus-kashmir.tomb.com, and tjresearch.info.
range of information on every aspect of the life of Christ in India. There have been several national and international researchers who strongly share this belief. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, the founder of the Ahmadiyya sect of Islam, published his Urdu book Masih Hindustan Mein, or Christ in India, in the late 19th century. He did a detailed research on Rosable Shrine and studied the local traditions of the people of Kashmir. He collected signatures of a large number of local inhabitants of Kanyar in support of his theory. Aziz Kashmiri's book, Christ in Kashmir, is one of the most authoritative works on the subject. Andreas Faber-Kaiser wrote, Jesus died in Kashmir. Jesus, Moses, and 10 lost tribes of Israel. Holger Kirsten's book, Jesus Lived in India, created quite a stir in the West. Edward Martin is the author of King of Travelers, Jesus' Lost Years in India. Some of the most comprehensive books are written by Fida Hasnain and Suzanne Olson. Rosable, The Tomb of Jesus, and The Rosable, Beyond the Da Vinci Code. It is really hard to believe that Jesus Christ had any connection with India, leave alone the story of his life and death in Kashmir. The mainstream Christianity scoffs at any such idea. Christianity is based on the faith that Jesus died on the cross, was resurrected, and then ascended to the heaven to sit next to God. Every faith has its own reasons. The Roman Church was established on this very faith. And this very faith has made Christianity the largest religion in the world. We all adore, love, and hold Jesus Christ dear in our hearts as one of the saviors of mankind. Still, the human mind is always curious. It always seeks to unravel the secrets of history. One such seeker lives here in this quaint bungalow in Srinagar. Destiny has bestowed this seeker with opportunities and facilities to seek what lies beyond the obvious. Dr. Fida Hasnain is now the single most credentialed person who has an intimate interest and thorough knowledge of the theory that connects Jesus to India. He is the former Director of Archives, Archaeology, Research and Museum for Kashmir and was once listed in Who's Who in Archaeology. Dr. Hasnain is MA, LLB, PhD and D.Lit and has been honored with a number of awards for his excellence in several streams of knowledge. It was indeed destiny that put him on the trail of doing research on the history of Jesus in India.
It was by chance that I got interested in the subject. I happened to be the Director of Archives, Archaeology and Research and Museum in the state, and I would go to Ladakh often. We got stuck up there and we had no work, so we were in search of books. So I went to the Marine Mission Library to search out some books so that we could read. I became friendly with the caretaker of that Marine Mission. His name was Reverend Chatan Punsuk. He told me that he has a very interesting reference about Saint Isa. I said, what do you mean by Saint Isa? And he told me about Isa, what you say, Hazrat Isa, one of the prophets. The name of Nicholas Naughty was there, and it came to light that he had come to Ladakh. He had stayed at this Hemas Gumpa, and he obtained the life of Jesus Christ.
In the late 19th century, Nicholas Notovic's book, The Unknown Life of Jesus Christ, had created quite a sensation. It contained texts from ancient Buddhist manuscripts describing the life of Jesus in India. In 1887, Nicholas Notovich was traveling on horseback in the Ladakh region. During the journey, he happened to visit an ancient Buddhist monastery near Leh. In these beautiful surroundings is situated the magnificent monastery of Hemas. These monasteries have stood tall since hundreds of years, braving the vagaries of time. These are the repositories of the teachings of the great Buddha, whose message of love and peace had reached the remote corners of the world hundreds of years before Christ. Away from the glamour and pollution of modernity, these monasteries maintain their possessions and way of life intact. Generations keep changing, but the acquisitions remain unchanged and uncorrupted. Nicholas Notovich stayed in this monastery for some days. During his stay, he befriended a Lama. The Lama shared some astonishing things with him. He showed him ancient scrolls which mention the story of Jesus in India. There are hundreds and thousands of ancient manuscripts in these archives. They contain discourses of the teachings of Buddha and great Buddhist monks of yore. Many of these manuscripts have come from other Tibetan monasteries and ancient universities like Nalanda of Magadha. Ancient India had several great universities, learning centers and libraries like Nalanda, Vikramshila, Taxashila and Udantpuri. When the Mughals invaded India, they destroyed most of these universities. When the attacks were taking place, many Buddhist monks escaped to Tibet carrying loads of manuscripts and books with them. The Hemis manuscript which Notovich saw was perhaps one of such documents, which reached the Patola Palace in Lhasa. The original Pali version is still supposed to be there. What is in Hemis is a Tibetan translation of the original Pali text. These documents have been seen not only by Notovich but by many others. A disciple of Ramakrishna Paramhans, Swami Abhedananda, went to cross-check Notovich's discovery and published the text in his own book, Journey into Kashmir and Tibet. Many other explorers have also seen these documents. These scrolls also reveal the story of Jesus Christ between the age of 13 and 28 years. It is surprising that the Holy Bible contains no story of Jesus during this period. The scripture is completely silent about these years of Christ, but the scrolls of Hemis reveal all. The advent of Jesus Christ took place in the city of Bethlehem, in the state of Palestine, which is now Israel. Right from the time of his birth, this son of Maryam and Joseph became the cynosure of the eyes of the wise and learned. When he grew up, he bewildered the elders with his explanations and interpretations of the scriptures. This extraordinary talented boy attracted and impressed one and all. People from all over flocked to hear him. The Hemis manuscripts tell us that around the age of 13, boy Jesus left his home and traveled to the east. He traveled through the famous Silk Route, which links Europe and Asia. Then he arrived in India. After crossing Punjab, Jesus reached Rajputana, the majestic land of Rajasthan. He spent some time with the Jains, the followers of Vardhaman Mahavira. Then he proceeded toward the east coast of India and reached the city of Jagannath Puri in Orissa. This town houses the ancient temple of Lord Jagannath. Lord Krishna is known as Jagannath here. Puri has been an ancient seat of Vedic culture and studies. This magnificent temple has been in existence hundreds of years before the birth of Christ. Even today, millions of devotees throng the temple, which is highly revered in the entire region. The Hemis manuscript discovered by Nicholas Notovich refers to Jesus as Isa. The scrolls reveal that young Isa studied Vedas in this city of Puri. He also learned to cure by aid and prayers and mastered many other spiritual techniques. Not only did Isa master the Vedic scriptures, he also started preaching their real meaning to the masses. Initially, the priests of Puri welcomed him, but later they grew jealous and started creating troubles. Isa was compelled to leave Jagannath Puri. He then moved to Rajgriha, the ancient capital of Magad. Lord Buddha had lived and preached here for a very long time. In those times, India's Magad Empire was the most advanced and happening place in the world. Magad had some of the best schools of learning. Young Isa is supposed to have attended some esoteric school in this kingdom. He started becoming familiar with the teachings of Lord Buddha. After Rajgriha, Jesus lived in the holy city of Varanasi for a few years. On the banks of Ganga, this city was known as Kashi during those times. Here, Isa studied holy scriptures and other sciences under a guru whose name is said to be Udraka. After some time, he left the city. According to Hemis manuscripts, Jesus came to Ladakh after traveling through Nepal, Tibet, and other parts of the Himalayas. He was a great traveler. In fact, some scholars refer to him as the king of travelers. He spent some time in the Buddhist monasteries of the Himalayas and then returned to his homeland.
Jesus Christ, as a young man, came to India and he visited various places. He went to Kathmandu. He got influence with Vedanta and philosophy as well as with Buddhism. And naturally, he learned from Buddhism non-violence, brotherhood, peace, certain principles of coexistence. And naturally, when he started in his ministry in Palestine, he taught the same principles which are enshrined in Buddhist canon. Right thinking, right thought, right action, non-violence, compassion, brotherhood, peace.
There is nothing written in the Bible about the activities of Jesus between the age of 13 to 28. He suddenly appears in Judea at the age of 29. He started preaching and establishing his ministry from there onwards. After a few years, the great Messiah, the Son of God, was crucified in his own country. Most of us associate crucifixion with death, but many biblical experts feel that Jesus had not died on the cross. There are some strong reasons to believe that. Jesus was nailed only on the hands and the feet. These are not life-threatening injuries. His vital organs were unharmed. It takes quite a long time to die on the cross. But Jesus was taken down within a few hours. When his body was scratched, blood and water came out. This can happen only if the person is alive. Many experts feel that the ointments which were used to treat him are for recuperation. They are not used for funerals. All these factors indicate that there was a plot to save Jesus Christ, and he was indeed saved. The Bible says,
Also, the Shroud of Turin, if that's real, the cloth that covered his body, I've heard that analysis shows that whoever that shroud was covering was alive, that he was pumping blood, that a dead person would have a different pattern on it. So it shows that it was, that he was still alive.
that Christ rose from the dead after 3 days. Or was he simply healed in 3 days?
I think that the events of the crucifixion was not, it didn't culminate in a resurrection, it culminated in a resuscitation, like a near-death experience, that he survived. The life that he lived after the crucifixion was absolutely phenomenal. He got a lot of things done. He wasn't in hiding, he wasn't a miserable barefoot prophet. He was a great leader. He led several exoduses out of Israel.
The Bible reports Jesus Christ as walking and talking after his supposed death on the cross. There are at least 12 physical appearances of Jesus after crucifixion. First, he appeared to Mary Magdalene and assured her that he was alive. We know about the Last Supper. Jesus had food with his disciples. He wanted to convince them that he was not a ghost. Behold my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Handle me and see. because a spirit does not have flesh and bones as you see me having. Luke chapter 24, verse 39. When Thomas doubted, Jesus asked Thomas to check for himself whether he was alive or not. The 12th appearance of Christ was in Damascus, full 6 years after crucifixion. These physical appearances are very strong signs that Jesus Christ had not died on the cross.
When he was saved from the cross, his consort, Mary Magdalene, flew towards France, and he fled away towards Iran, Damascus, and then Tehran and Iran on the same Silk Route. There was in those days the great national highway between Asia and Europe, and the same he traveled again on the same route towards this side.
He was accompanied by his mother Mary and a group of followers. There are two major Persian books of history, Ikmal-ud-Din of 10th century AD and Rawzat-us-Safa of the 15th century. They record that Jesus took the name of Yuza Asaf in Persia and the Turkey region. A Persian dictionary called Farangi Asafia says that Hazrat Isa was known as Yuzu, and as he cured lepers, he became known as Yuza Asaf,
the healer of lepers. So Yuzu Asaf, healer. So they gave him his name, and then from that, from Iran to Kashmir, he is remembered by the same name.
When he reached Gandhara, Mother Mary passed away. A tomb can be seen even today. The place of her death is now known as Muri and falls in Pakistan. The Acts of Thomas mentions the arrival of Jesus in the famous city of Takshila. These are the ruins of the famous university which was at Takshila. It was a great center of learning and Buddhist studies. King Gondophares was the ruler when Jesus had visited Takshila. From Takshila, Jesus reached Kashmir.
जरा जरा है मेरे कश्मीर का मेहमान नवाज, राह में पत्थर के टुकड़ों ने दिया पानी मुझे. Even the stones give water to pilgrims here. Kashmir is a land of, they say Rishwar, land of rishis.
The entire Kashmir is indeed a blessing of the divine. There is something in Kashmir which uplifts the soul. After all, there has to be some reason why Jesus Christ chose Kashmir to settle down. One of the reasons of Christ's arrival in Kashmir can be traced here. This is Gutli Bagh, about 50 kilometers from Srinagar. People are simple, hardworking, and efficient in whatever they do. What makes them different is that they are not original Kashmiris. Centuries ago, they came here from Afghanistan's side. They speak the Pashto language, but they have not forgotten that they are originally Jews from Palestine, the homeland of Jesus Christ. They call themselves Bani Israel. History tells us that out of 12 Jewish tribes, 10 had migrated away from Israel since 5 centuries before Christ. These scattered 10 tribes have been known as the lost sheep of Israel. Many of these lost Jewish tribes have got settled along the Silk Route, Afghanistan, and up to Kashmir.
There are huge Jewish populations along the Silk Route. Afghanistan, most of the tribes in Afghanistan, the warlords, the Taliban, the Pashtuns, are all descended from the 12 tribes of Israel, and many are still known by their tribal names, their biblical names. And they wandered and settled across most of Afghanistan and what is now Pakistan, northern India, and Kashmir.
Gathering these lost sheep back in his fold was one of the missions of Christ's life. In the Bible, Jesus says, "Go not into the way of Gentiles, and into the city of Samaritans enter ye not, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Scholars suggest that the lost sheep of the house of Israel Jesus was referring to included these Jewish tribes which were settled in the regions adjoining Kashmir. These tribes are of a tall, robust frame of body with manly features. The women fully formed and beautiful, with aquiline noses, and their features also resemble the Jews. Most of the Afghan tribes are the descendants of the Jews. He wanted to seek and save them. Therefore, it is no wonder that he proceeded towards Kashmir. This is the residence of Qutb Alam Badshah, the head Maulavi of Gutlibagh. Today, there is a big gathering to sing glory of the Lord. Qutb Alam Badshah presides over the function. The culture and tradition of Kashmiris are different from ours. We have not forsaken our traditions. Their eating habits, costumes and living style is very different from ours. So far, we have not had marital relations with them. Their culture is different. Ours is different. With the advent of modernity, this community is showing signs of change. They are opening up to new ideas. As India is developing fast in a globalized world today, the Kashmiris are also reaping rich dividends. There are several such communities of Bani Israel in Kashmir and India. These people of Jewish descendants have physical features which are strikingly different from other Indian communities. Some genetic studies are also being conducted which indicate the Jewish links. Experts have identified more than 90 tribal or caste names which are common both to Kashmir and Israel. There are a large number of terminologies in Kashmir which might be having Hebrew links. Mr. M.B. Alam lives in his residence at Gutlibagh. He is a scholar of the history of Bani Israel. We are Israelis, connected to Prophet Moses. Prophet Ibrahim had 11 children. Huda was the eldest. We are his descendants. We are Bani Israel. Our living style, food habits, traditions, and even language is different from that of Kashmiris. When Jesus came to Kashmir, Buddhism held complete sway in the region. Together with Buddhism was existing the Vedic culture. So, it is but natural that most ancient records of the arrival of Jesus is found in Pali and Sanskrit documents.
The greatest evidence we have from Vaishya Puran. Then we have the Chinese documents, glass mirror. We have Tibetan, we have Persian manuscripts also. We have manuscripts in Arabic and information about the thing. But the main information, the chief information is from the Sanskrit work Bhavishya Mahapurana.
Bhavishya Mahapuran is an ancient Sanskrit treatise and one of 18 major Puranas. According to some experts like Dr. Fida Hasnain, it was written in the 2nd century AD. This Mahapurana mentions a meeting of Isa Masih with King Shalivahan. Jesus is called Isa Masih in Sanskrit texts. Shalivahan was one of the major kings in Kashmir during the 1st century AD. He had established the rule of the Aryans on this side of the river Sindhu or Indus. The Purana says,
Ekadatu shakadhisho himatungam samayayo honu desasya madhe vain.
One day, King Shalivahan went to the Himalayas. There, in the land of Ladakh, he saw a pious man in the mountains. His skin was fair and he wore white garments. The king asked the holy man who he was.
Ishaputram chamama vidhi kumari garbha sambhavam.
The holy man replied, I am the son of God and am born of an unmarried woman. I have been sent as a prophet to the fallen ones. After the purification of the essence and the impure body, and after seeking refuge in the Vedas, man will pray to the Eternal. The holy man further said that he has been called Isa Masih. This is a very interesting document indeed. It clearly mentions the name of Isa Masih. It also speaks of him as the Son of God and born from an unmarried woman. Glass mirror is another ancient document mentioning the details of Jesus Christ as User Asaf.
The glass mirror is the history of religions written in Chinese, which was translated into Tibetan.
The glass mirror puts User Asaf on the same pedestal as that of Buddha. His teachings were similar to that of Buddha. It says, however, that the teachings and fame of User Asaf did not spread much out of Kashmir.
In Kashmir, we have mysticism. We have Silsile Rashia. That means Rashi order. Its base is Buddhist, Shaivist, and then Islamic. It is composite. Our great Rashi Laldet says, Mazan Hindu Musulman. Don't think in terms of Hindus and Muslims. Shiv Chi Thali Thali Vuchan. Shiva is looking upon you minutely. Turuke Chuk Yohezan. If you are intelligent, you must understand this point, that all human beings are same.
It is believed that when Jesus arrived in Kashmir, he first stayed near Pahalgaon. In these serene surroundings is located the famous shrine of Ash Muqam. This monument is known as the burial place and shrine of Baba Sheikh Zainuddin Rishi. He was one of the main saints of Kashmir's famous Rishi order. This entire mosque is constructed over a cave in the mountain. The cave has been used by sages, monks and saints since Vedic times. Kashmir's Rishi order starts from the Vedic sages. It was taken forward by the Buddhist monks and continued by the Muslim saints. It is a unique example of composite culture which is the hallmark of Kashmir. Isa, or Jesus, is supposed to have lived in this cave when he first came to Kashmir. Ancient Rishinamas, or the chronicles of the sages, indicate towards this fact. The original name of Sheikh Zainuddin Rishi was Jai Singh. He had come here in the mid-15th century. People from all walks of life come here to seek solace. They have immense faith in the shrine. This place was earlier known as Ashosh Muqam, which almost means the abode of Isa. In course of time, it got corrupted to Ash Muqam.
So Ashmakam is basically a place where Jesus has lived, he has meditated, and that rod is there.
Ash Muqam preserves Asai Isa, or the rod of Jesus. It is the rod which Isa used to carry with him all the time. The rod is not shown to anybody now.
That's pretty cool if it's in there. The walking stick or the rod of Jesus.
Mullah Naidari compiled his history of Kashmir in 1420 AD. He writes that User Asif came to Kashmir during the reign of King Gopananda in the 1st century AD. Mullah Naidari has mentioned that Hazrat Isa, or Jesus Christ, had adopted the name of User Asif. He mentions Jesus as Hazrat Isa Ruh Allah, meaning thereby Isa, the Spirit of God. Some archaeological evidences also support the arrival of Jesus in Kashmir. This ancient Shiva temple was built in 220 BC. According to historian Mullah Naidari, King Gopananda got this temple repaired in the 1st century. For repairing the temple, Gopananda sought the advice and guidance of User Asif. This fact is supported by other historical documents too. There are 4 pillars around this temple. There were ancient inscriptions on each of these pillars. Now they have been completely erased. But 2 inscriptions were photographed in 1869 by Henry Hardy Cole, the then Superintendent of Archaeological Survey of India. During this period, User Asif proclaimed his prophethood, year 54. He is Yuzu, the prophet of the children of Israel. The mason of this pillar, Razi Hashti Zako, year 54. This pillar in honor of Eli Kim, son of Marjan. The inscriptions mention Kashmiri year 54. This corresponds to 78 AD. Thus, the probable year of the arrival of User Asif, or Jesus Christ in Kashmir, is 78 AD. There is also a possibility of an interesting link between the Jewish culture and Shaivism. This is the Star of David, the most sacred symbol of the Jews. In Vedic culture, this is the symbol of Shiva and Shakti, the conjunction of masculine and feminine forces which gives rise to creation. The Shiva Lingam in Yonipit is a 3D representation of the same symbol. The Shiva temple of the Gopadri hill also houses a Shiva Lingam. The Shiva angle becomes prominent when we find that there is a mention of Isa in the ancient scrolls of the Nath sect of India. It is an extremely old, secretive and mystic sect of Shiva worshippers. Their ancient book, Nath Namavali Sutra, mentions Isa as Isanath. It says that Isanath finally got settled in Kashmir. The fourth inscription on the Shiva temple is very intriguing. This pillar in honor of Elikim, son of Marjan. But who was Marjan?
Story is that Yusuf married Marjan, a shepherdess from the village of shepherds. Now in Kashmiri we say Pohol Gam. Gam means village, Pohol means shepherd.
Traversed by boulder-strewn Lida River, Pahalgaon is a major center of tourist attraction in Kashmir. Shepherds come from far-off lands bringing along their flocks of sheep. People are traditional and rooted very strongly to their culture. According to the Persian history book Nigaristan-e-Kashmir, Yuza Asif married a shepherdess of Pahalgaon. It was King Shalivahan who persuaded Yuza Asif or Isa Masih to marry. The king had shortlisted some girls from whom Isa selected Marjan of Pahalgaon to be his wife. According to inscriptions on the Shiva temple, Elikim was the name of the son of Marjan and Isa. It seems that there are many aspects of history on which proper research has still not been done. Archaeological investigations lead us to another place called Harwan near Srinagar. Adjacent to Harwan is the ancient archaeological site where the fourth
Oh, it was at Harvan that Baba pointed up into these mountains and said that Jesus is buried there and that no one will ever find the tomb.
great Buddhist council was held in the 1st century AD. These walls of small boulders and pebbles have preserved history which unfolded more than 1,900 years ago. It is a saga of that time when great Kanishka was the king of this part of the world. In the 1st century AD, he convened a great council of Buddhist monks at this very place. Scholars came down from far-off places like Central Asia, China, Sri Lanka, and other parts of India. This 4th Buddhist Council is a landmark event in the history of Buddhism. It gave birth to Mahayana Buddhism. Who was the moving force behind the great revival of Buddhism? Such a great insight requires a great personality. Scholars feel that this great personality was none other than Yuza Asif. The strongest evidence for this are the 2 coins released by Kanishka. One coin mentions Buddho or Buddha. The second coin mentions Yuzo or Yuza Asif. It is clear that Kanishka respected and adored Yuza Asif in the same light as Buddha. It is indeed highly fascinating to see one personality of Yuza Asif uniting Christianity, Buddhism, Vedic culture and Islam together. The truth is one. The prophet, sages and saints reveal the same truth in different ways. They are the confluence points of diversity of views. Love to all is their fundamental message. We, the ignorant followers, create conflicts and sects, but the messengers of God preach oneness of truth. The evidences are very strong that Yuza Asif, the prophet buried at Rozabal, and Jesus Christ are the same person. The next step of research should be DNA testing of the tomb. We must use the latest scientific techniques to ascertain the final truth.
The DNA is the next important tool that we need to help establish the truth about Rozabal tomb.
Whatever may be the ultimate truth, the Rozabal shrine stands as a great heritage, not only of India, but of entire mankind. It must be preserved properly and should be open to all.
This shrine, which is revered by Christians, by Hindus, by Muslims, by Jews. It is a national heritage, and it should be taken over by UNESCO. It should be taken over by Government of India. It should be looked after by the Archaeological Survey of India.
I think it is the responsibility of India and the government of Kashmir to step up to the plate, to take Rosabal, to protect it and restore it, and to preserve it for all future generations.
In the city of Patna, there is the Khuda Bakhsh Oriental Public Library. It houses a large number of ancient books and documents. There is an old book in Urdu in the library by the name of Qissa Shehzada Yusa Asif Wo Hakim Balahar, the story of Prince Yusa Asif and Hakim Balahar. It describes the moment of death of Yusa Asif in Kashmir. Yusa Asif called one of his disciples Ya Bodh and instructed him to build a tomb at the very place of his death. Then the great Savior delivered his last sermon. Now, at this last moment, my spirit is ready to fly towards the Holy One. It is necessary for all of you to follow the commandments of God. None should go towards the untruth, leaving the truth. This is indeed a message for the entire humanity. This Rosabal Shrine is perhaps the most unique place in the world. Nowhere else do we find such a great confluence of religions, thoughts, and beliefs. It conveys to us the message of the Savior, who was the Prince of Peace. Generations will come and generations will go. The grand cosmic play of God and His messengers never sanctions conflicts and hatred. The only will of the Supreme Father is love. This is the message of the Rosabal Shrine, the supposed tomb of Jesus in India.
6 win 8 games will put a smile on your face. But don't mistake.
Okay, so you can unmute your mics and any comments, sharing, thoughts. Love to hear them.
Well, my first comment, Joe, is if Jesus spent so much time in his younger years in India, and in fact learned much of his philosophy and religion from the Buddhist, and then returned to Israel, and then came back again to India or Kashmir to die, I often wonder why there isn't more in the Jewish literature and documentation with respect to this activity. All I heard in this was the documentation and stories from the Buddhist and Indian side.
Perspective.
And the perspective from their side. And I'm just wondering, that if there isn't something more, should be something more in the Jewish literature, documentation, archaeology, and history that would say more about this, since it seemed to be such a big part of his life.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I can't answer that. Do you think it would be in the Middle East, in Jerusalem, this libraries, that he would,
Yep.
that Jesus would have told people where he went, or they would know when he came back? I mean, from
And there's nothing there, and especially since there was so many Jews in the area that he traveled.
right. Yeah. Well, good point. I don't know. I can't answer that. Anyone else?
Your thought.
Want to say something? Anybody?
Anybody else?
Well, the other question I had is one of the ladies said the next step is DNA.
Right.
And I don't have any idea whatsoever how they could do any DNA work.
I don't know. Yeah, well, who knows who's buried in there in that tomb? Like I said, Mayor Bob said he's buried in the mountains up above Harvard.
Well, they could get the DNA in the tomb, but how are they going to match it to the real DNA of Jesus?
Well, exactly. I don't know what that would. You know, how can you say this is the DNA of Jesus? Whatever DNA you have.
Yeah.
So, right. But yeah, so all Christianity, the fundamental teaching is that Jesus is our Savior because he conquered death, and through conquering death, he conquers our death, and by having faith in him, and belief in him, we go to heaven. But it was through his death and resurrection, and then rising into heaven, and so. Mayor Baba said that is that in a way, that alone, if that's the reason that believe in Jesus, that diminishes Jesus as the avatar, that rising from the dead is actually kind of whether bringing other people back from the dead or rising yourself from the dead as a miracle that many advanced saints can perform. And that the avatar, the Christ, is greater than that. That's not the basis of his avatar. So, what Mayor Baba said, Jesus didn't, and this tradition is he did not die on the cross, but it is actually greater than Christianity believes him to be. That the role and function of the avatar is much greater in terms of his universal work and who he is and what he does, and that the performance of miracles, he had to perform them in order for that culture, and he had to get himself crucified. That was part of his mission. But that is not the miracle. All the miracles he performed in the rising from the dead are really not, according to Mayor Baba, the proof of his avatar. That he's great. The avatar is greater than that. So that's that. So it's a major challenge to the fundamental tenets of Christianity. If this is true, and it'd be a hard stretch for Christians to accept it, and I can understand that. And the Immaculate Conception is another one. Mayor Baba said that Jesus was conceived just like everyone else was conceived, but that there was no lust. That the Jesus and Joseph and Mary were very pure souls, but there was no lust involved. But that they had intercourse like everybody else. That there was no miraculous conception. So all of these fundamentals, he didn't ascend into heaven, no immaculate conception. Some of this fundamental teachings are off. So anyway, anyone else?
I think it was interesting that they linked the three religions together so well.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I think maybe part of this is that they want to, show that that there's a lot of commonality between the three different religions.
Well, yeah, and like I said, these political open wounds of points. It's also where these great religions come together in the Middle East. It's Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, and they're flashpoints, and it's the same there in Kashmir. The same religions. It's these contact points, and yeah.
Basically the same.
Yeah, right, and that they're all one. Yeah, and that's the fundamental teaching. All religions are one at the core of it. Slight changes based on the culture and the time and traditions, but essentially, and it's a universal religion of love. They said it. Yeah, and I like that. I like the ending.
Well, it certainly was a new thought for me. I had never thought that Jesus had anything to do with Kashmir, so I learned something today.
India, and it's interesting. Also, they say he in his travels, if it's true, to India, in his 20s that he went made contact with the center of Krishna. So Krishna was one of the avatars, and that he made contact with the Krishna center. He made contact with the Buddhist center, and did he make contact with those before he went back to Islam? He must have. He came through Iran. Yeah, he was in.
He was in Varanasi too, so he was probably with the Hindus also.
And he made contact with the Vedic, and he made contact with no, this was before. I'm sorry. What am I saying? Muhammad wasn't until 680. I got mixed up there. But he made contact with it was Zoroastrianism. Zoroaster was the ancient religion of Iran. And Mayor Baba said he was the first avatar of this era. They go way back, but going back 7 Zoroaster. No one knows for sure when he lived, 6000 BC or so. No one knows for sure. But he must have made contact with the Zoroastrian community when he came through Tehran. So all his previous avatars of the going back to Zoroaster, he seemed to make contact with those centers. Whether he was, I don't know if he was God realized then. Perhaps he was meeting up with the avatar has to meet with the perfect masters. There's 5 God realized perfect masters who call him down, and he meets with them, and one of them removes his veil. So he may have been in his travels to India. Most of the perfect masters are usually born in India or the Middle East, mostly India. So this is what they don't even know. He may have been contacting the perfect masters. Perhaps one of them removed his veil, though I thought John the Baptist, I heard, if anybody knows that, let me know. That John the Baptist was one of the 5 perfect masters, and that when he baptized him in the River Jordan, he was removing his veil as the avatar. But he may have met the other 4 perfect masters in his travels to India. I'm sure he had to. So and some of those that one they say he studied with this guru or that guru. The one that they may have been the perfect master at the time. One of the 5 perfect masters.
I agree, Joe. Makes perfect sense. And he did say that John the Baptist served the same function that Upasni served for Baba.
Right. Okay. So he was one of the 5. Right. And yeah, it makes perfect sense that he was contacting the other perfect masters in India on his travels, and he's probably hooked up with them. Right. So so Jesus had with John the Baptist and was baptized. That's when he came back, I think. Right. That wasn't before. If he went at 13, I think the contact with John the Baptist was when he came back. So
yeah, I think that was it. That's when he started his real work.
Around the age of 29. So if he was contacting the other perfect masters, this was before his veil was removed. But so, just intuitively,
That's why there's nothing about it in the Bible.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So anyway, so anyone else?
Hi,
Myrtle.
Hi. I feel, the message is same. Jesus always spoke about how to love thy neighbor as thyself, to forgive is divine,
Sure.
to honor is human, and all religions talk about it. And he also speaks about the light. And if I'm not mistaken, the Pope, where the Pope is, they have this huge library where there are these secret documents that are kept, which are, not accessible to all and only to some. So I'm sure over there, they must have a record of everything. And because Christianity has its own mission, maybe they don't want to reveal this and the secret or the passage and the work that he did, so that time is kept not spoken about. There could be more, but I'm sure if we are aware of this, they definitely have more records of it, which are
Where did you
secret.
say these? Where did you say these were? I didn't catch that.
There is a library where the Pope is.
In the Vatican.
Oh, in the Vatican. I see. The Vatican. I got you. Okay, I didn't hear that part. Okay.
That has a lot of documents which may not be accessible to all of us, but I'm sure that will have the record. If we have access to this knowledge, they definitely have that. And I'm sure that they don't want the mission and the message of Christianity to be diluted, so that thing is not spoken about and it's secret. But somehow, obviously, it's come out because everybody knows about it or is talking about it, and they don't want to, like even the Old Testament and New Testament has its own thing happening over there. So, but it's interesting to see this and to know of this. But, how much of it is true? How would you know? They're saying it's there in the records. I mean,
Well,
it's all.
there's none of this. I mean, if you're going to proof, it's a collection of documents. Are they accurate or not? I mean, but I guess when the same thing is being said by Vedic texts, Buddhist texts, and Muslim Islamic texts, then it begins to point. Well, maybe the evidence builds up, but there's no absolute proof. It's impossible. But it's fascinating. I found that these documents are in these. They found them in these monasteries, and I didn't know that was there. And that also that Jesus may have revitalized Buddhism into that at that big meeting, and it was commemorated on that coin, that during Kanishka, King Kanishka. I think that was really fascinating.
There should be more awareness of this, where a lot of people in India who are Christians know about it, and they follow Jesus with all their heart. And he was such a miracle healer as well, right? After a certain point in his life. So if he was here during that time, there would have been miracles as well, because wherever he went with it just was a part of, what he did.
That was part of his mission, and that got people's attention, performing miracles. Mayor Baba said that each of the avatars will station himself on one of the planes, and that Jesus stationed himself on the fourth plane, which is the most advanced plane of miracles, in order to perform, like raising the dead. Like you need to be on the fourth plane to raise the dead. Like a third or second planer could do less more minor miracles, but to raise the dead, you got to be on the fourth plane. So that Jesus stationed himself on that plane just to perform the miracles. But he was so much greater, and he was infinite consciousness and the avatar. But some people believe in Jesus because of his miracles, but that's a limited understanding of the avatar. So anyway, Mayor Baba revealed more about the nature and function and who the avatar is and what his role is than any other time. So, and that's all in his in the books about.
But even today, I have seen so many people conduct miracles in the name of Jesus. I have seen in Bombay myself, where the blind started seeing, the deaf started hearing, the people who were in wheelchairs have started walking. Wow. And I think it's a very pure, it's not just about Jesus Christ, it's also about Jesus's consciousness, his consciousness. It's
but again, this emphasizes that the performing of miracles is not the indication of Jesus's Christ. He stationed himself on the plane of miracles for a reason at that time. And in the Catholic Church, in order for a saint to be canonized, he or she has to have some miracles, credible miracles to their in their biography, in their resume, as it were. And so, performing miracles is something that saints do. And so Jesus is much greater than any saint. That's what I'm saying. And So
totally beyond all of this. It was really nice to see this. Would it be possible for us to get a link that you could share that we all could see later as well?
yeah, it's on YouTube. Just in the YouTube search box, type in Government of India, Jesus in Kashmir documentary. Government of India, Jesus in Kashmir documentary. That's what it is. And there's a BBC one, but I'm not thrilled with that one. It's because this, I think the narrator, the text of this I think he really got it, in terms of the central message. So anyone else?
Yeah, it was
really fascinating.
It was very beautiful, interesting to see that he had gone to the monasteries and he had studied the Upanishads. And it's just what was more thing is that he was buried as a Muslim, and I.
He was buried. If they're saying he was buried,
there yet.
he was buried as a Jew in the east-west direction.
Yeah, because he was the direction, right?
Yeah, he was not buried as a Muslim.
Right. He was buried as a Jew.
I have heard that recently that on top of one of the tombs or one of the places where Jesus was in Kashmir, there is a Muslim prophet's tomb, and this is that.
That could be. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but
I think
cartoon where they believe Roosevelt, that they believe has the body of Jesus, is oriented east to west in Jewish tradition. Yeah.
I think there's a video about that, isn't there, Joe?
There probably.
I missed the whole thing, so I'm going to try to see it. But I just wanted to say one thing about Jesus and miracles, because I was raised as a Christian from the time I was a baby.
Yeah.
Jesus always said that the miracles happen because of people's faith.
Yeah.
If they believe, that's when the miracles happen. And it's just not, he would always attribute it to the faith of the person. Like the man who was lame and couldn't walk, and Jesus told him, get off your pallet and walk. And he did. So anyway.
Yeah, no, that's true. And Baba, there were miracles happening around Baba, and he said he didn't even know that that they were happening. It was their faith in him that was causing make it happen.
Right. Baba never took credit for the miracles.
No,
he always said it was the other. And
but
as far as the burial place, according to Baba, that is not the burial place.
Right, exactly. I've been saying that throughout. Yeah.
Where is it? Where did Baba say?
When he was in Harvan, I'm not sure how far that is from Srinagar. He pointed up to one of the mountains there and said Jesus is buried up there, and that no one would ever find his tomb. I read that in the beginning. If you just type in Jesus in Kashmir and online Lord Meher, you see all the quotes of that.
Yes, sir. Okay.
So,
I'll do that.
Yeah. So according to Mayor Bob, he's not in that Roosevelt tomb. That was up in a mountain outside Harvard, and no one will ever find it.
So Joe, are you saying he's not in the place that he is claimed to be in this documentary?
Right. Yes.
Right. Oh, okay.
That's what I'm saying. What Bob said. Yeah.
This is just an observation, but I noticed that from age 13, age 13, the narrator said that, and going on for many years, there's no documentation about his life. And I was just thinking that later on, when bar mitzvahs began in Jewish life, it's at age 13 that boys become responsible for themselves. And it sort of, what came to my mind is that in that action of Jesus taking off on his own, he was setting that up in some way.
That's a good point. Probably right after his bar mitzvah.
Right, he probably left right after the bar mitzvah.
No, but there's no bar mitzvah. I just looked it up. There was no bar mitzvah at that time. It says that it came much later.
Oh, really? There's no bar mitzvah ceremony? Okay.
The last thing that I remember and that I think is in the Bible about Jesus is when he's in the synagogue and he's talking to the scribes, and they're floored because of his wisdom. And he left because his parents were already on the way home and they thought they'd lost him. And he said, why are you worried about me? And then they found out that he had been in the synagogue talking to the scribes and Pharisees. And so there's that story
about my father's work or something.
Yes, exactly.
I remember that. I haven't looked at the Bible in years. Yeah. So, and apparently he had the same impact on scholars and scribes in India, and that in this document they said they welcomed him initially, then they got jealous. Okay, the same thing that happened in
really. Oh yeah.
He had to clear out the first place he went where the Krishna Center. Well, he had to clear out because I guess he was giving talks based on the Vedic traditions and also Christian traditions. And
I wonder how he got exposed to those traditions.
Huh? What?
He was there.
He just went there.
He went there.
Yeah, he went there. Yeah, and they mention it on the document. The places he went before during his 20s and teens and 20s.
You know, he
came through Iran, so he spent time in Iran. He spent time in Syria, and then what is now Pakistan, and working his way down. So who knows, you know? And there are some accounts of him, other accounts that I think this document didn't mention of Jesus in those places. So when you add it all up, I mean, these are all independent sources that are all making note of this great prophet and similar name. So when you get that much documentation, it's kind of adds to the strong possibility that it's true.
And I wanted to say something to Mona. There's a possibility that some of this is written about in the text that the Essenes had. Where is the name of the place? You guys know what it is. It was discovered archaeologically not too long ago.
The Lost Sea Scrolls.
Yeah, the Dead Sea Scrolls. Yeah, Quarus. I can't remember the name. It's Quorum. Anyway, can't think of it off the top of my head. But the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, and they're still trying to, find out, translate or whatever everything that was said there. But those were the Gnostic Gospels. Those were the kinds of things that Baba writes about in Infinite Intelligence and God Speaks. That kind of knowledge or wisdom.
Well, if this becomes accepted in the future that Jesus did go to India 2 times before and after the crucifixion, and the connection with all the great world religions, and that go along. I think that in itself will go a long way towards bringing about peace among religions, and not believing that one religion is superior to all the rest, or that one avatar is superior to all the rest, or one avatar is the last avatar. So if that ever becomes accepted, I think just that
but what we don't know, Joe,
would be transformational for the world. What?
I was just saying, but we don't know is people's reactions are so different than what we think they should be or would be, because just imagine millions and millions of Christians are going to be devastated because they have been counting on being saved, by Jesus.
Something would have to happen to cushion them some other experience if they're going to have to let go of that fundamental belief, they're going to get thrown out of that belief, they're going to have to be cushioned in another one that makes more sense in a way. I would think that. Otherwise they're not going to let go of it. It's too critical. They're not just going to jump off into some kind of
it will be a great shock to a lot of people. A lot of people will not be able to, in fact, our whole Western culture is the Judeo-Christian tradition. I mean,
we're not ready for it yet, but many people are. I mean, are able and willing to accept the unity of all religions.
Oh yeah, I agree with you, Joe, and I think I'm one of those, and I think most Baba lovers are those kind of people. But at the same time, I'm just trying to be realistic.
Yeah. Look at the world. No, we'll take a transformation. There has to be a transformation of consciousness first. Then
probably. I mean, look at the world today. You would think.
Yeah, but just But it's not going to happen before that. The people are just not going to go. And traditional Christians or Muslims and then they're not going to accept that. Buddhists,
I want to
Hindus would have an easier belief. Yes, what?
I would like to add something. So I have been born into a family which follows a spiritual path, and in that path they talk about the good of all religions, whether it's Buddhism, Christianity, Muslims, Jesus, Allah, Hinduism, and all. And I've grown up on that, where all is one, and they have a guru who has several lakhs of followers all over the world, not just in India.
Right.
And it's about the path, it's about the name, it's about basic principles of being human, being kind, and all of that. And it's already happening. I mean, there's in Amritsar, I don't know if you know, up north, they have their like how we have Mehrabad. So
Right.
the base is there in Beas, the center. And it's just amazing, to follow that. And he talks about meditation and, all of that. And
So what is the, Mona, what is the name of the tradition in your family? What is it called?
It's not a tradition, it's a spiritual path. They are called the Radha Swami Satsang Vyas. So they have satsangs, twice a week. And it's beautiful to just listen.
Is there a teacher or guru who associated with this? Is there a particular teacher or guru that?
Yeah, the guru initiates you. I'm not initiated yet, but my parents.
What's his name? Is there a particular teacher?
If you just look up Radha Swami Satsang Vyas, you'll get it. His website and his name and everything. Okay. Gurinder Singh. And the previous guru was Huzur Maharaj Charan Singh.
Did you say Gurinder Singh, Gurinder Singh?
If you just look up Radha Swami Satsang Vyas, you'll get everything, Elizabeth.
We cannot not understand that.
You said it too fast. You said it way too fast for.
If you can put it in the chat, because
put it in the chat.
It's too fast for us to get what the words are and to be able to write it. So
I couldn't get that.
She did.
One thing I wanted to say about this documentary, and I think it captured it. There's something totally unique about the avatars, his personality, his presence, and his influence on people, his impact that no other guru or even perfect master can match. And there's this and this universal love, but just it's indescribable, his presence. And I think that came through for me in this documentary, and that that Jesus, the avatar is his descent into God in human form. It's the Christ. It's indescribable. And so that quality of avatarhood, the impact he had on all these people as he moved through India and the Middle East and through and so it's lasted for centuries. And just an individual great saint or prophet would not have had that impact. They wouldn't have kept that record of him for so long. He must have made a huge impact and profound like no other. And so that is the sign of the avatar. That's one of the signs of the avatar. And that when he dies, when he drops his body, his presence inspires this great movement of love for him. That look Christianity, there was a handful of followers of Jesus when he died, and 2 centuries later, Christianity is the religion of the Roman Empire. Like that, only avatar could do that. It's impossible for any other saint or even perfect master to do that. Or look at what happened with Islam. Muhammad quickly, within 100 years,
that's exactly
what he says. But it's interesting. He said that Jesus's influence did not spread beyond Kashmir, and I think that he contained it there. It wasn't meant to be the Christianity was not, it wasn't meant for to spread Christianity hidden through India, through the East. Christianity was a Western religion, so his avataric energy, whatever you want to call it, spread westward, even though Jesus went eastward, and he contained it within that avataric influence. That love was contained.
But one of the things he did say is that this message, which started in the Old Testament, was meant for Jews and Gentiles. It was meant for all nations, for every person at all levels of society. I mean, that was a main precept. And then that.
I'm just saying that Christianity did not spread through, even though Jesus was in India and for years, more years than he was in Palestine, however long, 40 more years. It did not, it wasn't his will or mission to have Christianity spread through the East.
Did they say why in the documentary?
I say why. I'm just speculating. That Jesus was meant for the West. I mean, because it happened. But if I'm just, I'm looking. That's right. For the West. But what's fascinating, he was in India longer than he was in the Middle East, and yet it did his. Even though he's only there up to 13, and then 4 years, and then he left, and yet his impact was so powerful throughout the West. Yeah.
And that 100-year period after Jesus died, supposedly on the cross, that period has a specific name, and it's floating out of my head. But that's the time during which the different books of the Bible, they started putting them together, etc., or deciding on what books would be included and not included. And of course, that continued until all these various conferences that they had. And it was Constantinople, of course, who brought Christianity to the Roman Empire, to Constantinople, and then the rest of the Roman Empire. So, I mean, that 100-year period is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, and Baba said it's when the avatar is going to come back after 700 years, and those first 100 years is the most powerful part of his manifestation. He's going to come back in 1400 years and the last 200 years. Okay, so that fits. Yeah.
The Apocrypha is what I was trying to say. The Apocrypha are those books that are included in Catholic texts, but not in Protestant texts, except for but they are also included in Eastern, in the Eastern Church, but they're not totally accepted in the main Bible for the Protestants. But they're very, very, very interesting. And one of my favorite books is in the Apocrypha. And then there's also another set of texts, which are even more excluded, that has a long name that starts with an E, and I can't think of it. But the study of that is totally totally fascinating.
All right, cool. Okay, thanks. Thanks for sharing. Do you want I've read Baba's statements about Jesus, and before I started, do you want me to just go through those again? Does anybody just to reaffirm that, just to re-show what he said? I mean, this comes as a review. I got to do share screen again. Hold on. And then we'll end. All right, so yeah. Let's see. Baba dressed in the sky so as not to be recognized by villagers. Baba showed them where he stayed in seclusion and fasted in 1929. So this was 1933. This took place, and he was in Kashmir in 29 and in 33. Baba had stated that Jesus did not die on the cross, but came to India, where he spent many years wandering from place to place. Baba, I don't think Baba mentioned Jesus being in India before the crucifixion. He spent many years wandering from place to place, doing his universal work until he dropped his body in Kashmir. So he was all over the place. He didn't just go to Kashmir after the crucifixion and then stay there. He spent many years wandering from place to place. And pointing to a hill, Baba revealed, this is the place where two of Christ's apostles, Bartholomew and Thaddeus, buried his body. They had accompanied him from Palestine. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, then the next day, this is another reference from Lord Mayor. The next day, Baba spoke about Jesus in his parables and again stated that after his crucifixion, he went to Kashmir where he died. There's a legend among Hindus, Tibetans, and Muslims that Jesus lived and died in India. And then he said, there's one secret about Jesus which the Christians do not know. When Jesus was, this is interesting. When Jesus was crucified, he did not die. He entered the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Now, in Baba's book, God Speaks, he explains in detail the different God realization and the states that God realized beings go through. And some of them go through, some of them a very small number retain, come back to creation consciousness, and out of those 5 become perfect masters. But Nirvikalpa Samadhi is immersion in infinite consciousness, infinite bliss, without any consciousness of the creation. So it's the I am God state, the beyond state without creation consciousness. And that's where he went. That's interesting. He went into that state of God realization. He was God realized, and he went there. And he had no body awareness, you know. And then he came back down into body awareness after 3 days, and then they took him off the cross, and then he put on a disguise and he went eastward with some disciples to India. All right. So in a sense, he did die and come back. I mean, he did. He left his body, went to the 7th plane, and he came back into his body. And in a sense, but that's what we all have to do. God speaks about the divine theme. We all will do that. In a sense, Jesus dying is dying to his gross, dying to the creation, not just dying to the illusion, not just dying to his physical body. It has deeper meaning. And so he did die and come back, but in a much more profound and much more,
So essentially, he went through Baka Bila and Thana Bila. So
right.
Thana Bila is the final one.
Right.
Before you get God realized, and you have to. So in the first, in the Baka Bila,
he was already God realized, but he didn't have to do that again. He did it when he got God realized from John the Baptist. He already did that, so he could just he was already infinitely conscious.
I didn't know that.
He dropped his consciousness of the body while he was on the cross, of the physical, of the gross, of the creation. Okay, then after reaching India, he traveled. This is interesting. This is really fascinating. He traveled farther east to Rangoon in Burma, and that was never mentioned, the Burmese connection. I wonder if there's Buddhist monasteries in Burma that have texts about his stay there. There must be. So that was not mentioned in the documentary. That would be fascinating to research that.
And that is a gorgeous place with gorgeous. I've never been, but I would love to go there.
Yeah, it's
amazing.
And it's interesting. Burma is another place where there's been all these horrors politically, what the generals are doing there, and the genocide of those, I forget the name of the people that in the last couple of years. So yeah, and I mentioned it before you came on. These the places, Catherine, associated with Jesus, his birth in the Middle East and his death in Kashmir. These have been like political open wounds that never heal. Similar, and they remind me of the stigmata. And anyway, these places on earth, and Burma's become one too.
What was that about wounds that never heal? Did Jesus have
politically, the Middle East is a wound that never heals. Political wounds. It goes back to the Crusades, and particularly, and even worse, since 1947, with when Israel became a country.
Yeah.
And all the attempts to make a peace settlement fail. They last for a little bit and they fail. And it's the same. I went into the current situation briefly about Kashmir. It's the same story there. Particularly since 1947, and that led to 3 nearly nuclear wars because of Kashmir, between India and Pakistan, and China invaded India in '62 over some issue there in Kashmir. Okay, so and then so he went to Kashmir, where he settled. When his work was finished, he dropped his body. He entered the Nirvikalpa Samadhi state, which is where all God-realized beings, perfect masters or other God-realized beings, when they leave their physical body, they go into this permanent state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, of infinite bliss forever and ever, for all eternity. He was buried in Kashmir. And it's interesting, saints in India have verified these facts about Jesus' travel. Mankind will soon become aware of them. Okay. So.
What is that that review of religion. What's that?
All right, do that. That was some other site. Let me pop that up. I'll do that.
But is that the movie Jesus in Kashmir?
No, the movie. Oh, this one is here. This is the movie.
Is that the one that you just watched?
Yeah, it's right here. It's on
Because
the-
I'll copy it before we leave.
Well, you don't have to. Just type in Jesus is in Kashmir, Government of India documentary, and I'll be right there.
Yes. Okay.
All right. This is something that's it's repeating what I already said. So.
Mhm.
Okay, so great. So that was fun. Good thing to do, I think, during the Christmas season. And hope I didn't. Again, this is an attempt to proselytize or convert anybody. If it feels right, great. If it doesn't, that's fine. You know, that's fine. But this tradition is out there and it's been there for a long time. These books, they mentioned that Nicholas, what's his name, the Russian, the 1870s, who went to that monastery and then ended up writing a book. So it's been around for a long time, this tradition. And it's really fascinating, the lost tribes of Israel, and that they're genetically and physically, they look like Middle Easterners. They do not look like Hindus at all, these people up there. And that's in the documentary.
Now,
right.
The Lost Tribes of Israel, is that a book that you
The what? No, they mentioned the documentary, they mentioned the Lost Tribes, and they go into a little detail about they show you that's why Jesus may have gone to Kashmir, because the lost tribes of Israel, 10 of them are strewn out along the in Pakistan, and northern India, the spice route. Okay, so that's where they went, and one of them settled in Kashmir. Okay, so it was like a homecoming for Jesus and whatever other.
Yeah, there's either a Kerala or Canada, I can't remember which one, is a place where they have a lot of Jewish residents. And my good friend Orna's mother was from there. And I'm trying to remember whether it was Kerala or
Well,
Canada.
Kerala's in the south, so they may have headed to the south too. I'm not sure, but it's just the connection. These people up in Kashmir, the Jews, believe that they are descendants of the lost tribe of Israel going back to Moses. They believe that, and it's in their tradition.
Wow.
You know, they're different from
I think that could be. I do.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
by the way, the Uyghurs that are being
So Happy New Year's, everybody, and might see you tomorrow on the center's celebration there, which is on the web. Happy New Year.
okay. Happy New Year.
Alrighty,
Happy New Year,
Okay,
Joe.
bye-bye,
Okay,
buddy.
that was fun.
Yeah,
Alrighty,
bye-bye.
Diana.
Bye-bye.
bye now.
Diana, can you stay?